vanguard and born here and brought up and been educated and also worked all his life and very much into the tradition of this. He is going to talk about the Shiva as a proletarian hero, hippie, and a symbol for secularism in Benares. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Well, I'm saying, as Mia has introduced, I shall be talking about Shiva as a proletarian hero, as a prototype hippie, and also the tradition of secularism or inclusivism, as it appears in Varanasi, how it is affected by this particular deity in Benares. Now, to start with, I would like to tell that Shiva is the presiding deity of this town. And so we have a lot of deities, we have a lot of gods, 330 million. One can always question why. And I think mostly it is because people from different faiths moved into Hinduism. We are taught it, and that is how it becomes increasing and an increasing number. But it has never been a proselytizing religion, and proselytizing religions could not affect it also on the other hand. So apart from this, I would like to say that this sort of interpretation of Shiva, who is considered the Mahadev, the greatest of the gods, who has no much connected with today's life and the contemporary situation that we are facing, and as well as the debates that have been taking place in our world system since last 2 centuries particularly. So from that point of view, Shiva is a very interesting character. And before I come to that, let me explain to you, because you may not be, since you are here in this town, I'm sure you get a bit introduced to this town's culture, tradition, and formulations also. Hinduism, and a large part of Hinduism has been grown up from this town. Until you said comment on this town. Large part of the concepts of Shiva. And it is unlike in Europe, there is a division line, there is a separation line between mythology and religion. Christianity is there, but Greek mythology is not enmeshed into it. There are two separate entities. In India, that separation is not there. There is some kind of synthesis of both of them combined. So that is one of the basic formulations which makes you to various interpretation of things. I said, and so when mythology is there, mythical figures, you can interpret them in their various ways. It's not necessary that you just interpret in one way and that is the final way. It has never been like that. Mythologies are always multi-interpreted entities. From age to age, they differ. And even the philosophical religious discourse also changes its dynamics, and it goes on changing. It is not a stable thing. Only thing that comes in question is that whether these really corroborate to the demands of today, the world today, the people today, the developments that have taken place, the kind of society, the kind of environment that has been built, whether they really have some kind of relationship or not. I'd say that in India, these texts have been interpreted and reinterpreted. And I'm again reinterpreting in a way. I will not say I don't want to take a really a kind of ownership that I am interpreting it, but this interpretation has come. I'm saying this is that Shiva as a proletarian hero. Why do we call him proletarian hero? Number one answer, Shiva himself is a proletarian. If you compare him to the other major figures that have emerged in Hinduism, say Ram, Krishna, and I don't want to say the others, there are umpteenth number of them. But say if there are three major strands which we can really identify at the moment, and both Ram and Krishna, they are not exactly gods, but they are incarnation of the gods. And the story about Ram and Krishna goes on very feudal lines. Ram is the king. Krishna is also a king. They are not proletariat. So where a person or a society which has some kind of proletarian presence, and naturally every society has proletarian presence, and we have it also. So where do we find the symbol for that? Where do we find a place for that? So Shiva, from that point of view, is one who can really linked with the proletarian context, in proletarian being himself, and the proletarian cause also. One of the most representative scenario of the proletarian view that comes in the Shivratri itself. By the way, Shivratri is the festival of marriage of Shiva and Parvati. I don't know if any other religion has this sort of thing has been turned into a religious ritual or religious festival. It's marriage of the gods or marriage of the prophets and this and that. Jesus Christ remained single, crucified. Muhammad Sahab's life, we know he was a prophet. Buddha gave up personality and came out. The Jain religion people also they came from time to time and they left their families, though they were mostly born in royal families. But then there is rare instance in world history, and particularly world history which is connected with the religion and rituals, where a marriage is being celebrated. This was last day, last night was the night of marriage of Shiva and Parvati. Wow. What is the how does the proletarian context comes into this marriage as such? The Shiva comes to the marriage to marry Parvati, and she is called Uma. She is called many names. There is one thing which you must not forget, that as far as Indian mythology is concerned, every figure of them have not one name, but hundreds of names can be there. And you have to find out exactly where one belongs to. change also. There can be addition into it also. Now, we have a protocol in marriage. The bridegroom comes with a good number of his relatives, friends, well-wishers to the house of the bride to marry. Now, as far as the description of Shiva's marriage goes, he comes to marry Parvati on Himalayas. Parvati was is considered the daughter of Himalaya. That was Parvati, is there in Hindi and Sanskrit, Himalaya. Other name is Girija, there is also in Himalaya. Giri is mountain and the daughter of mountain, Girija and Parvati. So when he brings his this gathering which goes with the bridegroom to the bride's place and the altar is made there and marriage is done. This particular group of people are called Bharat, Shiva Bharat. They are called Bharat. Particularly in this part of the world, I'm saying the Hindi belt. I don't know what will be still goes on the Russian. They may not have this. So, in his marriage procession that he brings in the marriage, there are ghosts, there are all kinds of people. There are people who do not have their heads, people who do not have any hand or legs, all kinds of people. And it was a very strange combination of people. Now, when this kind of thing is projected in literature or in religious rituals, then one has to reinterpret the message. According to my interpretation, these were the people who were proletariat. Because it is the proletariat who doesn't have any kind of say in the society and has very little space for it. So, it is that. There is no head. There is no hand. There is no leg. There is nothing. So, all this kind of very strange kind of people follow Shiva into his marriage procession to the house of Parvati, to Shima. This particular spectacle of the marriage procession disturbs Parvati's parents, particularly his mother. And his mother says, well, look, I'm not going to give my daughter to this funny fellow who is carrying all this kind of people, whose friends are people whom we do not want to see. What a strange kind of people, what a strange kind of society my daughter will land in. And she simply said that, well, Parvati, you are not going to marry him. I'm totally against it. But Parvati says, no, I will marry this person. I'm not going to listen to you. Anyway, this is also a very important thing that arranged marriages as they are, and there can be a defiance of it also. So there is a moment of defiance also from the parents and others. So, this proletarian position is the first sign of Shiva being a proletariat hero. One who really represents the proletariat. Then you can see the whole life of Shiva also. His appearance, and you can see in this picture, here he is. He has in his hair, moon is hidden under it. The river Ganges comes out of his hair. he has a snake around his neck. And his neck is very blue. And there are there are a lot of things, and there is kind of a very partial photograph, partial portrait of Shiva. But in all, it's kind of a very odd person who is coming up. It is not those very well-mannered gentleman type of persons. You know, I'm coming to European context. I can say, well, I see in Orthodox Church, Virgin Mary is decorated just like a queen, because that is Byzantine culture, and she came from there, and they made her queen with a huge crown and great dress and everything kind of thing. So, the people who become dear to other people and become gods or gets worshipped, they change also. Their shape is also changed according to the people, how they perceive and these figures in history. So, from that point of view, Shiva is really a proletarian. He's an absolute proletarian who has very strange kind of appearance and who has all kind of things which are very negative in a way. And that is how he gathers the name also. His names are all connected with the things that he has on his head, around his neck, and so on and so forth. And he gets various names out of that. So, one thing that comes up that Shiva is really part of a proletarian descendants and also a part of proletarian crowd. And this is the distinguishing mark in whole of contemporary Hinduism and Buddhism. Varanasi, incidentally, is supposed to be the home of Shiva. And Varanasi also gathers many of its name from Shiva. Varanasi, you have come to Varanasi in the railway station, I know, particularly our German students, but others have come via the airport, I suppose. But anyway, the Varanasi is one of the names, and then during the Mughal times and even the early colonial times, this name got further diluted and it became Benares. And then it has a mythological name, it's a mythological entity, that is Kashi. But all three are the same thing, Varanasi, Benares, Kashi. So Kashi has this becomes the abode of Lord Shiva. And that's why sometimes Kashi is also defined, or it is also, like the gods, the Kashi has also large number of names also. It is called Avimukteshwar, Avimukta. That means Shiva will never leave this place. Mukta means to leave or to be liberated, and Aviv said no, Shiva doesn't leave this place. So this is Avimukta. Anandakam, this is the place of bliss and all that kind of thing. It is called also Mahashamshan, the great cremation ground. So Shiva is considered creator of the world as well as destroyer. So Mahashamshan is also there. So a large number of things are very closely associated with Shiva. Its name, its context, and everything. So this town bears the name of Shiva and also the characteristics of Shiva also Uh, it it has certain elements of it into it. Varanasi never became a political capital, though in past it has been part of the ancient Indian politics and this and that. But it has always been some kind of a place which was free of the big political fights that have been going on. But then it has been a place of very big discussion, philosophy, religion, and all that. It has been one of the most important centers of debate that have gone into the world system. The first round of debates have mostly come from extreme north from Punjab, where Rigveda was created, the first of the Vedas. But then it has moved on in the Ganga Valley and it has come to places like Benares, where further debates took place. So, this is the proletarian say in the beginning that there is a proletarianness, and that is how Shiva becomes a very much different universe. And if one really draws some kind of a proper interpretation from this, one will really come to conclude that Shiva has a very distinct character which is more closely connected with the common people, with the ordinary people. And that is how it spreads. The whole myth also spreads all throughout India. In Odisha, Shiva is an old man and part of the peasantry. In the tribal areas, Shiva is also there, but again he is part of the tribal peasantry, tribal population as such. So he gathers his various images to the dominant population, and which is constituted of the ordinary people. In other words, you can say proletariat. I'm not going to really very much going to distinguish and define exactly what proletariat is and this and that, but say, even if you say the ordinary people, just the ordinary people. Lords are kings, powerful people. So that is one. Another thing that I wanted to say is that history of this particular town, there has been, particularly in late 60s, which we now are of this generation, perhaps your fathers and grandfathers are aware of the early 60s and late 60s. Benares was considered the Shangri-La of the world as such. Why? And there was a huge number of people who assembled here. These are all very much connected with the incidents that was happening. What is 60s? 60s is on a global scale. It is one of the era which was marked by a very brutal war against the Vietnamese people in Indochina. And there were a lot of things happening around that. It was also an era of very confident economic system. The West was still very much secured in its welfare system. And the people didn't have much rush towards unemployment and that kind of thing. There was some sort of minimum guarantee of income by which you could survive. I remember one of my friends in Canada in the late 60s. world. And then he one day said that Deepak, you come along and I will treat you with a good Italian pizza. The occasion is that the Queen has sent me some money. I said, okay, good, very good, definitely. So, answer you heard the unemployment allowance. It may disappear slowly. The whole concept of welfare state may crumble down. It is kind of going down with the emergence of new United States, particularly Donald Trump and this and that. But 60s were altogether different. That was the era of confident capitalism. And, but very high degree of industrialism, very intense degree of industrial civilization also was coming up. All this was reflected into the movements in that period. It is the period which created hippie. Hippie was not simply something of psychological personality aberration. It came from certain very large background of the social system as it was moving around. If you see the hippie movement of that time, and we used to have, Benares was the center almost of hippies, Western hippies, European hippies, particularly American hippies. In Europe it printed on much later hippies. But in Europe there were other things. There was Uri and so on and so forth. There were huge student revolts, youth revolt, which even compared most powerful character of the French history, of recent modern French history, the revolt of design from presidency. And Germany, France, all these countries were completely in throes of some kind of youth revolt. That was mid-60s, 68, 68. There used to be various kind of leftists also. One variety of leftism was Trotskyism. European universities, Cambridge, Oxford, and various other universities were badly influenced by Trotsky. There used to be a Pakistani man, I don't know whether he is still alive or not, but he was quite a big name, Tariq Ali. He became one of the standing star of late 60s as a Trotsky figure. So, hippieism in the United States in search of an alternative mode of life from the drudgery and kind of suffocation of the industrialized capitalism, and Rudi Dutze in Germany, or Rudi Dutze was a German history, and Cohen-Bendit, all these were. They became kind of pan-European youth leaders of this time. I think one of them is still alive and used to be a member of European Parliament. In Europe there was a commotion. Young people were going on for new mode of life, were searching for something which was away from the deeply entrenched industrial capitalism and war, particularly. In the United States, there was no presence of left as such, so they turned to hippieism. In literature and foreign, in literature and even in music, the Beatles music was part of that. Beatles music was basically protest music. Protest music is what? Against the life at that time, against the dominant trends. Beatles came here in India also. They were part of, one of them played with our great sitarist, Ravi Shankar, and so on and so forth. There was a whole revolt in poetry writing. Beatniks were one who were getting up from the Greenwich village in New York. One of the great beatnik poet, almost he is considered the guru of beatnik poet. These are all rebellion figures as such. He came to Benares and he was here for 6-7 months, 8 months. Even more, I think almost a year, he stayed on here. And you always remember it. It felt so sad leaving Benares. They were all in search of what? They were all in search of an alternative mode of life. They had other dreams. By the way, economy and everything was working all right at that time. It had not gone that bad. But war was there. Vietnam or Cambodia, Laos, Laos, etc., etc. Carpet bombing. So they didn't want war. They didn't want to get involved in killing and getting killed. They didn't want. They loved life. That's why the slogan was love, not war, and that kind of thing. Flower children, etc., etc. Many things happen. Some of it still exists. Some of it still survives, but large part of it disappeared with the development in the whole world system. So, but Benares for some time, between 1962, 63, 64, and about up to 70s, mid-70s almost, had become a Shangri-La, an escape ground, an escape place for all these people. And who were the most interesting character for these people who were running away from industrial, dense industrial civilization, and from these civilizations of war, from the material world, successful material world, of course. The symbol was Shiva. Okay. So that's why I call Shiva also one of the prototype hippies, almost the Ari. Because he was one who attracted it. And people just stayed on here. For years and years, I have seen people getting old, literally about to die. Yesterday, in the last 3 days, we had a music conference here of it's called Dipak Malik, kind of classical Indian music, Northern Indian music particularly. But this music is more or less all over India. But Dipak, I found one fellow whom I saw after a number of years because I have been absent from Varanasi quite a bit of time. I've not been very regular in this town. And that was a Canadian sadhu. He told me once he used to come to a bookshop and read books there. And then he told that, well, look here, I had a Canadian passport, I just threw it in Ganga. And then I'm here. Of course, nobody asked him where he is from, this and that. He still survives. I was happy to see him. He is in his 90s, I'm sure. But he was there in the music conference up to 3 o'clock in the night. So all these people were basically dreamers of an alternative way of life, new mode of life. That is why they came. So, and who became the symbol of their adoration and worshipping was Shiva. So Shiva has a link with the modern world system. A spiritual game or plaything with the Hindus, with the devout Hindus only. It has almost touched the whole world system of that way. Another thing I'm saying, historically speaking, if you see, I'm saying for large parts of Indian history, there have been tremendous struggle between these conflicting philosophical perspectives as such. There is a poet called Chandidas. He is from somewhere in an area between Mithila, it's an area of a part of Bihar or it's nearer to Nepal also to an extent you can say, and Bengal. It's kind of a, those border areas from where Chandidas came. Chandidas said that there is nothing bigger than human being. Manushya, I'm saying, if there is anything to be worshipped, it is the human being. And these people who was to be worshipped, and human being was to be worshipped, was getting killed into the war, was getting killed into the drudgery of a industrial capitalist system as such. So that is what Chandidas was saying at that point in time also. There were people like Chaitanya also, they were also more or less saying these things as such. The medieval history was also dominated by people like Kabir, who attacked very bitterly and very maturely, attacked the priests of Islam and Hinduism both. Christianity had stated food in Benares, particularly in Benares. Although there were some people in Darbar of the Mughal Emperor South, it was the end of the Sultanate period in 30 was there. So there was hardly any trace of Christianity. But the two major religions which stand face to face in this part of the world were Islam and Hinduism. And so he is very, very bitter and very strong and very vitriolic critique of the priestcraft and various things. But ultimately a very mythical character. So all these things came. And these created some kind of background for Shiva. So Shiva is, becomes one who is perhaps, who can be put out from the 330 million gods that we have, with some kind of which speaks out for a different mode of life, for a different way of searching into the truth and that kind of thing. The third thing is that I think we have Shiva for secularism, a symbol of secularism, Varanasi. You missed it incidentally, our students who are staying here. They also missed, and you too missed because you were late. We have some kinds of a Shiv Bharat, the same Shiv Bharat, the marriage procession of Shiv which went to Parvati's house to marry. We have some also, Shiv Bharat happens in this city every year. For a long time, Shiv Bharat was also led by a Muslim nation. So this can happen only in context of Shiva. It doesn't take accepted figures. So Shiva Bharat was there. And Shiva Bharat was a symbol of Hindu-Muslim unity in this particular time. It is still continuing. It has become a very faded out version of the old Shiva Bharats as such. Otherwise, there used to be robust Shiva Bharat. And actually, this town never had any kind of that kind of communal bitterness which many other towns had, particularly during the colonial times and early colonial period, the conflict period as such. It was not so. There were reasons for that. The reasons, one of the big reasons was that there was the presence of the presiding deity whose whose wives were altogether different. They were not about the division line in society, even with the worst of figures. So Shiv Bharat is third thing which used to happen. Here, yesterday also it happened, but now very rare because we have a political dispensation in our country who are not very much conducive to the minorities, to the Muslims and so on and so forth. And it's kind of, I would not say exactly the fascist as such, but it is kind of an authoritarian fascism in nativity, a slow movement towards fascism, because all institutions of democracy is being reduced. Academic institutions are being hollowed out, and the life is becoming much, much more difficult than what it used to be, economically as well as politically and socially as such. The kind of difference that had emerged in late 20s in India of the last century, or exactly between 1946, 47, 48, which led to huge communal riots. Millions of people died, and millions of people were thrown out of their homes, their habitat, and became refugees. So that kind of situation again was emerging. It has started emerging from a couple of years back. It is kind of growing. And out of that, a political competition has taken over power also. So we do not know what is going to be the future of this country, but there are resilient forces. They perhaps will come up. And also you have some kind of historical, fictional, mythological symbols like Shiva also, which says something else other than that. So that's why Kashi was always, for a long time it was said that it was a place of confluence of different civilizations and religions particularly. There was a very important book written something like a couple of decades back by an American sociologist, and he said its headline was Clash of Civilizations, and that was that Islam and Christianity will fight each other. That will be very. When this Twin Towers were destroyed, this, that, all these things happened, Afghanistan, Taliban, etc., all this kind of thing. People thought perhaps that it has come. I'd say he is very well right. This city was not touched by that. This was a ground of harmony of religions rather than conflict of civilization, harmony of civilizations. But that is past. That has spread out very much. There is hardly any trace of that left. Buddhism developed it. Buddha gave his first sermon in Islam, hardly a couple of kilometers away, with his 5 disciples. Buddhism was bitterly opposed by Hindu priestcraft in about 9th century or so. And large number of Buddhist vihars, Buddhist monasteries were destroyed, not only by Muslims, but by Hindus also. That situation didn't develop here. There was a possibility of dialogue in this place. And dialogues, perhaps one of the invisible hand behind the dialogue was perhaps the concept of Shiva. A fictional concept, of course, you can say. But yes, a very dominant concept, a very overpowering concept, which created a different kind of atmosphere. So I'm being very short and brief about this. There are a lot of other things which can be said about Shiva. But since I limit myself to define Shiva and to find out some kind of relevance of Shiva to the contemporary world system as such, so I thought that I should talk to you. And I tried to put this whole concept of Shiva in this framework. I think I conclude my lecture here. But I would welcome if you have questions, and we have our students from Benares, you have come from Woodwood, and we have you also who has come, who has been students of Sudhir in Delhi particularly. And so I would like to have any kind of questions, because sometimes questions give much more opportunity to say something, to dilate upon issues, more than just one grand lecture which goes on. So, I try to give some kind of Western analogies and connections also. That was, I feel necessary, because the terms that I have used about Shiva, a proletarian hero, Adi hippie, and all this, and mostly at the moment coming from West. Perhaps in historical times in India they existed, even before they became part of the Western vocabulary. But so I try to someone also introduce you to them. So this is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I have one question. I don't really understand. Why did the hippie movement choose Shiva as a central figure? What was the reason for that?
Oh, yes, that's interesting. You know, there are a couple of things with hippies. They had very strange food habits also. That also coincided with Shiva. Shiva is supposed to be a person with blue neck. That means he took poison. So, I'm saying there is this episode in the texts as such that where the ocean was being churned around, and Shiva got the last of them, and there was nothing but the poison was left out. The other gods, they took away everything which was precious, rare earth. Huh? So, fight for rare earth. So everybody else got the rare earth, and this fellow got very poison. But he took all right, oh, this is mine, just for him. So he took the poison, and his name below. So that was one thing, because our hippie friends, apart from their, their perspective and their understanding about life, moral life, they were really using lot of drugs and various other things also. So they were also going through that route particularly. One. Second thing is that Shiva really represented some kind of a freelance life, a life which had limitless freedom, and that is what the hippie wanted. So it was very natural that they would choose Shiva as their presiding deity, as the rest of Benares were doing, but with much more hypocrisy and perhaps much more classical devotionalism or just, part of ritual, or sometimes very hollow ritual. But they really were the real devotees of Shiva. This whole crowd which came in 1967, 68 to Benares. And incidentally, they used to stay. You have your hotel. What is the name of hotel? Kushu. You are exactly in the same area, by the way. But previously, that particular area, Asi, it's called Asi. That's where one of the seminal texts of Hinduism, Manas's last chapters were written by Tulsidas. And they have a festival around that, in that particular area. There is a 3 days Dupat festival, which is